On our session. I know you have to leave early, so we'll try and...
Sunil, I'll keep my comment short because I'm sure everybody here wants to hear you more than me.
Thank you.
Can we start the countdown, please? Madhav?
Yeah, we can start, Rekha.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Sunil Munjal, Chairman, Hero Enterprise. Mr. Vishal Kampani, Senior Vice President, AIMA, Vice Chairman and MD, JM Financial Limited. Professor Ravi Dhingra, Managing Trustee, Dr. K.S. Basu Trust. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have you all with us this evening and a very warm welcome to the 5th AIMA-Dr. K.S. Basu Memorial Lecture. Mr. Munjal, it is a privilege and a pleasure to have you join us today, and many thanks for agreeing to deliver this year's AIMA's Dr. K.S. Basu Lecture. A veteran business leader and a statesman of Indian industry, you have always supported AIMA and have been very generous with your time and wisdom. We look forward to benefiting from your insights on an important management issue today. A very warm welcome to you. Vishal, it is great to have you with us today, and thank you for agreeing to moderate this session. A prominent leader of India's finance sector and a keen follower of technology trends, you're an example of agile and adaptable management leadership. Welcome to this very special session.
Thank you.
Professor Dhingra, we owe this opportunity to you as you take Dr. Basu's legacy forward as the Managing Trustee of Dr. K.S. Basu Trust. Thank you so much for partnering with AIMA in holding this lecture and for allowing us to celebrate one of AIMA's early leaders. A veteran management leader, you have worked in the US, Europe, Asia, and the Pacific, and you have been associated with major companies, including BMS, Procter & Gamble, and Spectrum Marketing. Thank you so much for joining us very early in your morning. It's, I think, barely 6 a.m. there, and a very warm welcome to you. Ladies and gentlemen, the AIMA-Dr. K.S. Basu Lecture commemorates one of the founders of modern Indian management and an outstanding institution builder. Dr. Basu was a pioneer of Indian HR management, and he went on to become a director at Hindustan Lever. A keen promoter of modern management, he helped found the Bombay Management Association and served as its president from 1961 till 1966. He served as the AIMA president between 1963 and 1966 and led the Association of Asian Management Organizations in the late 1960s and early 70s. He was the first director of the Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies. His passion for management learning and excellence remains an example for us at AIMA. Today's lecture is on the very topical issue of the end of predictive management and emergence of adaptive management. Traditionally, we have relied on plans, targets, and budgets to achieve our business goals, but these time-tested methods need serious rethinking. In a world where everything can change overnight, it is not practical to fix performance parameters in advance. Today, we need more of a direction than absolute milestones to go forward. We need to monitor our organizations on a daily basis and adjust goals, strategies, and tactics for alignment with the developing reality. However, the switch from predictive to adaptive management demands clarity of direction and avoidance of internal uncertainty and confusion. We are privileged to have an opportunity to hear Mr. Munjal on the subject. He has overseen many business transitions through different economic eras, and he mentors startups in management discipline. I'm sure you will enjoy his lecture. With these words, I'm now pleased to request Professor Dhingra to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sethi, and good evening. The trustees of the Dr. K.S. Basu Memorial Trust are delighted to support and partner with AIMA on the 5th annual Memorial Lecture. He was a visionary leader and educator who inspired and mentored a whole generation of students, including myself and my sister, who have made their mark as CEOs, entrepreneurs, and industrialists in India and around the world. By the 70s, he had become an internationally recognized management educator and practitioner, lecturing and advising around the world. He really had a passion for Indianizing management training and practices and was a staunch early advocate for developing a homegrown management model, teaching management concepts and practices in the Indian setting, reflecting Indian values and management style. My fellow trustees, including Mr. Fernandez, who is here in the audience today, and I thank you, Mr. Munjal, for graciously agreeing to deliver this year's memorial lecture. Thank you, Mr. Vishal Kampani, for moderating this session, Mrs. Sethi, Mr. Sharma, and the entire AIMA team for hosting this event. And of course, to all you attendees who have taken their valuable time to be here this evening. Thank you so much.
May I request Vishal to take over the session?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Rekha and Sunil and Professor Dhingra. It's such a pleasure to have both of you join us here. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it's a pleasure for me to have Mr. Munjal agreeing to deliver this year's Dr. K.S. Basu lecture. Sunil, you are an accomplished management leader, in addition to being an extremely successful entrepreneur, investor, and philanthropist. You've, in your career, played so many various roles and have been successful in all of them. So a big congratulations on that. You've not only built one of India's most iconic companies, but you've spent a lot of time, on the education institutional side, building cultural platforms, education institutions. You're also a key investor and a big mentor for so many of India's startup founders who built unicorns and so many unicorn startups. And I think your personal management experience, your extensive exposure to big business as well as startups is so phenomenal that we couldn't have thought of a better person to address today's topic. When you have competition between set businesses, new startups, and the whole wide change in the business environment, I think you are absolutely in the thick of it to be able to talk to us today about predictive management or the end of predictive management. Professor Dhingra, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you for partnering AIMA all these years in organizing this wonderful lecture. You are a distinguished management personality and been long associated with leading companies like Bristol Myers, Procter & Gamble, Spectrum Marketing. And thank you again very much for partnering us, joining us, and welcome to this lecture. So ladies and gentlemen, today's topic is of extremely high interest to any CEO that has, or any management professional or CXO who has a role to deliver business performance for his business and all his stakeholders. Never have been seen in recent history so many changes in various management disciplines in various businesses that we have seen in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years. And post-COVID, there has been a rapid change in the thought process of every CEO in terms of how they run and manage business. We've seen a tremendous amount of changes in geopolitics. We've seen a couple of wars in the last 5 years. We've seen a very different interaction between governments and business, where we are seeing an incremental role of governments in deciding policies for business without sometimes not consulting business, and a lot of changes in climate, and a tremendous amount of changes in technology led by AI. And specifically, in many aspects, India is a leader in few of these changes, and in many aspects, India is considered a laggard. And predictive management is actually from the stable world. How do you use predictive management techniques in a completely fast-changing world is a topic which every CEO deals with today. And I think, Sunil, we would love to hear your thoughts. And without saying much, I want to hand over this talk to you, and I will come back for Q&A. So, Sunil, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vishal. Professor Dhingra, Vishal, Rekha, AIMA, and Dr. Basu Memorial Trust. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here to address this group. The theme and subject, as you said, Vishal, is very, very timely today. Many of us grew up in an environment or in a professional era where the future actually behaved itself, where it was possible to forecast demand, plan capacity, build cost projections, and then focus for the rest of the year only on execution. The best manager was the one who reduced variation. And today, variation is not noise any longer. It is the default mode of how we operate. That is why the title tonight, I think, the end of predictive management, because forecasts are becoming like horoscopes. Interesting to read, but certainly dangerous to run a business and to plan a business on. So I'm not going to do a 2026 prediction for you this evening. I want to offer something which I believe will be more durable, a way to lead when predictions keep falling apart. And the way, I think, rests on three capabilities that we need to build: foresight, optionality, and resilience. Not prediction, but foresight. Seeing directionally what we cannot see precisely. And second is not efficiency, but optionality, which means building flexibility before we actually need it. And the third is not toughness, but resilience, absorbing shocks without breaking. And that is the framework. And I think it's important to spend a few minutes to discuss as to why it is critical. First, let's learn a little bit from our own history in the world. We have, sadly, a recency bias in our lives. We plan things looking at how they went in the last 2 or 3 or 5 years. But that's not the way the world always behaves. Take, for example, the World War. It was a set of events where everything changed almost overnight. Then predictions completely died. Industries had to repurpose. Supply chains became war corridors. Under rationing and extreme constraint, optimal meant sometimes getting nothing. So what mattered was the ability to create substitutions, allocations, and switching gears without breaking down. Then, on more recent history, well, recent meaning depending on how you look at recent, was India's independence and the subsequent partition. When the British left, somebody just took a pencil and drew a line across the country and said, this is a foreign country, this is your country. It created an environment which was completely unprecedented in history. It also created a migration which has been the bloodiest mankind has ever seen in its history. Many people found that their homes had become a foreign country overnight. So you certainly had no plan for that. So those who were adaptable, and actually you had no choice but to be, those who were more adaptable were able to fend for themselves better. Now coming to very recent history, we saw what happened during COVID. When COVID-19 hit, it was, every manager said, as much of a black swan event as can be. no company had planned for their markets to behave the way they did. And as you said, Vishal, we are an active investment office. So we went to all of the companies that we've invested with, and we said, we would like you to do planning, create a scenario planning where your market or your revenue dropped down by 25%, 50%, or even 100%. How would you survive? How would you manage? How would your people in your entire enterprise manage? And that was a very interesting, I have to say, a valuable exercise, because many of them learned to manage in the way they'd never actually imagined before. And it also held them in good stead once the situation and the economy turned around. So why would I mention these situations at a management association or at a memorial lecture which focuses on management? Because currently we are entering an era of this nature where uncertainty is actually the norm. You know, when when President Trump was to take charge, the week before that, I got asked by one of the major global media houses, what do I believe will happen? So I said, one thing is certain, there will be uncertainty. Even I had not imagined what would be the scale and the pace and the speed and the amount of uncertainty that the world would see. And we've seen extreme swings in this very short period, literally only less than 2 years. So which is why it becomes critical for us today as responsible and responsive managers to learn the 3 qualities that I spoke about earlier. Let me spend a little bit of time on that now, considering that 2026 is one of those years which has seen the world try to pull itself apart in just so many ways. Trade deals, actual wars, geopolitics, the conversations around sustainability. So I think the first thing let's talk about is foresight. Foresight is not a prophecy. It is not prophesizing. It is increasing peripheral vision, increasing what we call eyesight, training yourself to see around the edges, to look at what the possibilities are, what could and what might change, so that you don't get taken completely by surprise. And sometimes, by the way, you try and imagine situations that you cannot otherwise imagine. That is true scenario planning for today's world. We could not have predicted the tariff scenario, but we can see the larger truth, because now operates inside statecraft and not outside it. And when geopolitics enters the profit and loss list of every company, points forecasts lose power for exporters because the goalpost can move very, very quickly. And we've seen that happen in a very short period of time. The uncertainty, however, does not cancel growth. It just makes the ride bumpier. And in such a situation, asking what corridors might close and will there be others that may open, that becomes a more important question. And it's important to see, I was talking only a little while ago to a friend of mine in Ludhiana who makes scarves for the high-end boutiques in the US. And he said, not one of my customers has canceled my order, but all of them have said, please defer them, which means they're not going to sit idle. They will actually buy them from somewhere else, which means I have gone and lost this season already. So I have no option but to look elsewhere. Now, we did not know at that point in time whether the situation around the tariffs would get resolved in 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years. So it required entities to become more flexible. So now let's go a little bit beyond this. Let's talk beyond foresight. Let's look at what happens in terms of creating optionalities. Or if you like, I can spend a minute or two more on 2 or 3 big hurdles that stand in front of us right now. And I'm not sure whether hurdle is the right word, but these are things which have caused extreme uncertainties for business and in some manner have become hurdles. The new regulation around data protection and data management that came in was a wonderful thing. But companies that had already accepted orders or were negotiating at the final stage were told, by the way, this is what you have to follow. Now, clearly, all the companies, in fact, most companies, were not fully equipped to do that. They were asked to fill in these long, laborious, detailed forms to say, I can do this, I cannot do this, I will equip myself for this, this is what I'm going to do. And if your form that you sent was incomplete, you were told, hang on, the order is actually going elsewhere. So such situations are much more prevalent in today's environment than we've ever had them in business, which is why we are talking of not banking on predictive environment. Therefore, predictive management itself tends to lose some of its shine. I've so far talked about the seeing part. Now let's talk about the moving part. Because seeing early is useless if you have no room to maneuver. The moving part is what is called creating optionalities for yourselves. It means making sure there is an alternative or finding out if there's a lack of it, how you could actually manage in this. Right now, lack of options increases cost and dependency. And here's where the modern world has become strangely concentrated. Because we started saying, we will bank on big clients. Now, if that big client, for one reason or the other, as a constraint, as a non-tariff barrier, falls in a country that is sanctioned, your entire business comes to be at risk. There's a big question mark facing the very existence of your business in some cases. Let's take some real examples. Take Taiwan, for example. 90% of the most advanced semiconductors come on from this one small island, one seismic zone, one current governance, which is constantly close to a flashpoint and also under threat. We do not know if and when China will decide to walk over, and what the world does then is also not clear. So clearly, this is one of those issues where we do not know the situation, but we also do not currently have an optionality, which is why it is important and critical to rapidly scramble and see what options we have. If you look at rare earths by themselves are not actually that rare, by the way, but it's the processing of these which is controlled 90% by China. And we know what the situation in geopolitics has been for the entire world vis-a-vis China. So therefore, it is critical and important the world sit up and take note of this. If you look at things like undersea cables, as we depend more and more on digital communication, data management, we are highly dependent on these undersea cables. One cable getting cut can impact a significant part of the world. And if by any chance, more than one gets cut, you can imagine the chaos that would create in the world. We already saw in Europe, just because there was an outage in the ability to manage traffic, the device which manages traffic at one airport in Europe, tens of thousands of flights across all of Europe, either flying from or overflying Europe, had to be diverted or canceled. And this, by the way, took 2 days to fix. So there is a world that we live in today, which has flashpoints which can emerge at any given time. It also has another dimensionality, and I'm talking now of optionality, which is skills. In today's world, skills are also the new perishable. Because as the environment changes, as technology changes, the skill set required for us to stay ahead or on top of these new technologies is completely new as well. We do not yet have the vast majority of skills even present that we know will be required in the next 20 to 30 years across the globe. So it is essential for us to start creating those optionalities now, in some cases, even when we do not know what that skill is. So the amount of flexibility that the world is requiring of us is completely unprecedented. Let's come to the third capability, because even with foresight and options, shocks will still arrive. Resilience, therefore, is what decides whether we can bend or we will break. Resilience is not necessarily being tough. It is designed the ability to deform without fracture. I think that is what we were taught when we were talking about human evolution. We used to say at one time, the toughest will survive. But it is now clearly recognized, it is the most adaptable that will survive. It is the most flexible that will survive. It is those who are quick to reform themselves that will not just survive, but also thrive, because it is important in this world to learn not just to survive, but to put yourself in that position where you can actually thrive. We all lived through this stress test during COVID. You all saw which relationships held and which ones didn't. Some companies found that suppliers prioritized them, shipped to them first, extended credit, found alternatives when the usual channels broke down. Others found themselves at the back of the queue. So both situations got highlighted and heightened. We learned the hard way that contract is not relationship. Relationship is what truly mattered in those times. The difference wasn't size or spend, it was the history you had with each other. The companies that had treated suppliers as partners, shared forecasts with them, definitely came out winners. When disruptions hit, suppliers, whether merchandise, data, or service, does not matter if they trust us. It is only those will get prioritized. But resilience is not only relational, it is also architectural, because decision designs beat intelligence. You can design it into your structure, into the form in which you build yourself, in which you operate on a day-to-day basis, in which you plan ahead. Take surgeries in an operating theater. An OR is filled with most trained professionals. In any building, there are all kinds together. Surgeons, anesthesiologists, nurses, all with decades of experience. And yet, for years, preventable errors kept happening. Not because the people were incompetent, because they were human. And under pressure, in complex situations, we tend to behave differently. What changed? Outcomes wasn't smarter surgeons. It was a checklist. It's like in an aircraft, when you're going to take off, one pilot asks the other one of every switch that is to be flipped. Not that they don't know it, because they've done it hundreds and thousands of times, but they still run through this checklist over and over and again. I think it is important, therefore, in life for each one of us to develop these checklists, which also constantly evolve as the environment around us evolves. We will see this undergo another change with what happens with the advent of AI as it becomes more prevalent, not only as an application, but in the very structure of our organizations, in the DNA of our organizations. That is where we will see the real need for this new process that I believe will create a new method of operating that all of our companies will need to learn. So business, therefore, at this moment, has clearly a need to develop a new method of working, which brings us to another resilience, an asset that we have often undervalued, organizational memory. Very often what happens is that a person who solved a major crisis gets promoted, leaves a company, and all the others actually forget what to do in that situation. We have technology, but we've never used technology to create that kind of a data network which captures human knowledge until now. AI now allows us to do that. Let us build around the human knowledge, these networks, to build as a safety net for our organizations. Since we have 15 minutes, I'll try and cut this short. I think there is a test that needs no data. How many days last winter could we actually look out of our windows, and I'm not talking those of us who are in Delhi or in some of the Indian cities, and see a clear blue sky? It is today a challenge that we have created for ourselves. But instead of pointing a finger only at the government, it is important and critical, and actually I've just written about this in last weekend's newspaper. There are only 6 sources from which all of this pollution and the effluent, which causes both air pollution and water pollution, is coming. All 6 are fixable. All 6 have different sources and different entities which can fix them. It is therefore essential that all of them are addressed simultaneously. The government has a role, industry has a role, civil society has a role, and all of us as individuals have a role. If we all play, you can actually fix this. And if you look back in history, many cities undergoing similar situations that actually fix the problem. If you look at Beijing, after the Olympics they hosted, they completely cleaned up their system. Go back to look at what London did. It first put a financial burden on not clean vehicles coming in, also on congestion, and then cleaned up the system inside. You look at Pittsburgh, going back in history, it was the pits. It is today amongst the top most livable cities in the US. There was a time you could not see 200 yards at any given time of the day because of the coal pit heads and the steel plants there. They actually cleaned up their act. Dubai did this more recently. There are a whole host of examples. So I think what today's management and leadership requires is a comprehensive view, but done at a speed and with alacrity that the world has never required before. Because response time has actually become critical. But in this era of uncertainty, slack is what we need to create as capacity. It is no longer now waste. Slack has become strength. If you look at slack, in some sense, is also a muscle. If you keep working capital slack, which we earlier used to say, your current asset management must always be lean. And we used to pride ourselves even in our own companies that we run the tightest ship in the world. We run a negative current asset cycle in all of our manufacturing companies. We run them without warehouses, and we have deposits sitting in the bank instead of borrowing from the banks. I would say today, you should keep a little bit of borrowing availability available. The same thing with workforce. We used to keep a very lean workforce. Now having a little bit of bench strength is probably desirable in today's world. It may look like you're adding some cost, but at the same time, you're creating flexibility. Customers, diversifying customers, for the reason I spoke about a little bit earlier, I think is an absolute essential requirement. Technology is the fourth one in which we need to build capacity, capability, flexibility, and some extra room. 5 is our own footprint on how we tread on the planet is absolutely critical. And I think we need to make sure that the boardrooms in the world today understand the need for each of these as they go about designing strategy or overseeing operation of management teams. Because if the boardrooms are not equipped, the management team will never get the support that is required to be nimble, flexible, and to build leadership organizations in the new kind of management when predictability itself is in short supply. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Sunil. That was absolutely fantastic. And I love the way you combine foresight, optionality, and resilience. I think it really sums up all of the three key requirements which any business leader needs to think about today. And before I go to the questions, and we have tons of questions from the audience, I have, so you talked about the three things. You talked about foresight, optionality, and resilience. These are the three things which a leader needs to adapt and learn and think about more. So I have a question. How do you think about three things a business leader should unlearn to avoid the inertia in decision making? You know, many of my CEO friends who are all friends of yours, and we talk to them, they are stuck in a zone, I feel sometimes. And learning, of course, you know, having the foresight, learning optionality, building resilience, but sometimes I feel there are things they need to unlearn.
So you're absolutely right, Vishal. So what we have been doing in our organizations is two things, actually three things, to address this very issue. One, we have said there is many kind of learnings that is necessary, and one learning is for unlearning. We have to train ourselves. So in our schools, our family foundation runs some schools, and in our colleges and our universities, we have created a system where the curriculum is being reviewed every year. So in our university, 30% of the curriculum of the university is reviewed every year. So every 3 to 4 years, they have a brand new, newly minted curriculum. Otherwise, most universities are carrying curriculum and materials they were teaching 50, 100, or even 200 years ago. A lot of this is self-evident and completely irrelevant, but we're still teaching it. So we try and follow the same principle in our companies. We encourage both experimentation and collaboration to learn from others. So we encourage experimentation while recognizing that not everything will work and many things will blow up in our own faces. So in our town halls, when people are called up and recognized and given a pat on the back for doing something special, at the same time, we also call up those who tried but failed, and they are given the exact same recognition and the same pat on the back, because you never know when you start whether it's going to work or not. So the recognition is for trying, is not for the outcome.
Well said. Well said. We have a lot of questions, and I think few of the questions you've already given an answer to in your talk, but there are some pretty interesting and specific questions. And, one is on specifically from Tejaswani Dia. Her question is around AI automation and digital transformation, which is reshaping industries. And question is, what capabilities should students build today? And it's talked about your change in curriculum, which also, it's changing every 3 or 4 or 5 years. If you're changing 30% a year, it's completely probably changing in 3 to 5 years. So what capabilities should students build today to remain relevant maybe 15 or 20 years from now?
So the answer is nobody knows. So 15 to 20 years is too long a time horizon in today's world of rapid change for us to, again, it's going back to the old prediction days. You cannot predict 20 years off today. So even our own long-term plans that we used to make in our organization group, we used to make 25-year plans. And that time people said, you're crazy. Who can see 25 years ahead? But we did make them. And they were directional plans. Now what we started doing is that 25-year directional plan itself has come down to 5 years. That is the directional plan. So in our university, it's not just that the 30% of the curriculum will be reviewed at the end of the year. What we've now started doing is we are making changes on the fly in the year itself. Because of what we are learning, the changes that are taking place are not just significant, they're also happening very rapidly. What we're saying is keep yourself open to these changes, keep open-minded as well. Because sometimes they seem ridiculous, but they only make sense once they get applied and you see the benefit of it. But sometimes the very same thing that seemed to be working well, 6 or 8 or 9 months later, itself is outdated because a new process, new system, or a new technology is coming. So, which is why the flexibility portion that I talked about is also an essential skill. So we are training students now to be skillful at constantly working in a changing landscape, to try and walk on ice skating rink, to see how you can stabilize yourself when the very earth under your feet is moving. So this is a very important skill that we need to teach, especially the young people. Frankly, it comes easier to young people than it does to more mature and older people. So which is why in some of the cases, what we are doing is we are giving leadership roles to some people who are under the age of 30 for significant areas where technology is the big driver.
In fact, there's a question from Naveen Gupta, and you talked about management roles to younger people. In traditional organizations, that's not always easy. So his question is, how can managers assess and develop their own resilience and adaptability skills in the face of current uncertainty? And this is particularly true I've noticed also in the non-tech companies, right? Because it's very hard, you have a hierarchy. How do you actually, one is build and assess and develop your own resilience as an organization yourself? And how do you cross the hierarchy and promote?
So let me give you an answer of a very traditional sector. You're probably aware, I chair a large teaching hospital in Ludhiana. So each time I go there, our conversation is about what kind of growth, what's new, how do we add new system, new process, new technology. Last time when I went there, I said, I don't want to meet the heads of departments. I don't want to meet the deans or the principal or all the senior folks. I want to meet only assistant professors and that level or lower. 90 of them came into the room. I had a very interesting conversation with them. I shared with them what is our plan, what is our strategy in the coming time horizon of the next 3 to 5 years. Then I asked them, how many of them would like to get involved in senior/admin roles? 90 of the 90 put up their hand, 90 of them. We made 12 committees, Vishal, and those are working so wonderfully right now. These are people who would never have got a role, a senior or an admin role for the next 15 or 20 years, by the way, in their normal careers. They have not just been given, they have taken on full responsibility. And I have to say, our senior team has been wonderful for stepping back and giving them room to operate. And they're all also appreciating what they're able to learn from their own juniors. So sometimes it is about training the minds of the more senior people within the organization to create room and for them to have an open mind to learn from those younger or less experienced than them, because they are digital natives. For them, many of these things are what is called self-evident truths. They don't need to be taught, trained how to program or put on a TV or a computer. They're born with this skill.
No, that's fantastic. In fact, one concept I heard of in a US institution was reverse mentoring, where you actually have the younger managers in the company who actually mentor the older managers, just so they have very free-flowing chats and they can learn about technology and trends and be more on the same page. But coming to something more current, there are two questions, one from Girish Choksi and one from Arun Mathur. Both are around the current trade deals. Girish's question is, when we see the trade deal with the EU, how do you see the need to step up the sustainability measures in Indian industry? And Arun's question is, again, around the US's view on geopolitics as well as climate change. When the US has withdrawn from all sort of environmental programs and investments, right? What is the future of many of the projects related to sustainability and climate change, and which are so necessary from a mankind perspective? And this question relates to also are these trade deals overlooking the concepts of sustainability and climate change?
So both actually very important and critical questions. I have to say, for the last 20 or 30 years, India has said we want to stand up and be counted in the world. See, genetically, India is a trading nation. We've done it for millennia. It's only on recent times that we actually got pulled back, and we've not been able to pull ourselves out of that hole we were in over the last few hundred years. Now, we're saying we wanted protection. When we found that protection is not even available, then we learned to fend for ourselves. We built amongst the many companies who were actually objecting to India opening up. Many of those companies themselves have become global leaders. We have started to both build brands and world-class products, services, and companies out of India of late. We had not done that earlier. Otherwise, they were all from the Anglo-Saxon world or some from Japan, and then lately from Korea, etc. So India is a new player. It's literally a new kid on the block. So for us, it is critical to learn what global scale truly is. Because we used to play mostly in the Indian market, so our capacities were geared towards the Indian markets. As we started becoming more open, more global, we've learned that it takes a different scale, a different sense of customer service, a different sense of positioning for us to become key global players. So we were lucky in some of our businesses, we started doing this quite early on. But it is fantastic to see how Indian companies are now both gradually and some very quickly scaling up. But these number of trade deals that India has done recently, more particularly the two big ones of late, I think will open up a whole new set of opportunities for us on both the export front, the import front, trade and manufacturing. So it's an enormous opportunity. If we are smart, we can, and we will take big advantage of this because we opened up sectors both on which India already plays on the top of the global value chain. You also opened up sectors where India needed protection. So India can play to its strength of large labor-intensive areas as well. So we have an opportunity in both ends. And I have to say the agreements have been done quite sensibly. There's been so much back and forth in this. There's also been some differences and bad blood. But eventually the place we've come to settle at is an awesome opportunity for us as a nation. It is entirely up to us now as India, as Indians and Indian industry, what we make of this. We can become global players in many more sectors than we have been. Equally, we had two opportunities earlier when countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, even Bangladesh took more advantage than we did. But I think both the awareness in the government and industry today is much, much higher. Plus the risk on the flip side, if you don't, is also very apparent. So I am a great optimist right now on where India is headed to. On the second question of the environment, I am quite disappointed with the way the entire world has behaved. And I mean the entire world, because this has been caused by us. It is not anybody from some aliens who come and cause this on the planet. It is the way we have used or the way we have abused the planet that we see the challenges in agriculture, in air quality, in water quality, in the availability and access to minerals and metals and the like. I think all of us have a key role to play, and we should play it regardless of whether others are playing the full role or not. We can well say that why should I do this because so-and-so is not doing it. We should do it because we are concerned. because we are responsible. And because this is not the planet we want to leave behind for our children and our future generations, it will not be livable. We are already on the margin with air quality not being of a level that WHO prescribes as healthy and safe any day of the year. So we cannot say, if the US is not doing it, that I should not do it either. We have to find ways to convince the US also to play a more active role. By the way, while they've pulled back, to be fair to them, they've not totally stopped doing everything. The negative bit is they're pushing very hard on highly polluting technologies, while they're also growing the very high-tech sector. So if we can gently nudge them back in that direction, I think that would be good. If we cannot do it today, we could probably do it after 2 or 3 years. But that's the stand we and everybody in the world cannot and must not give up.
Well, that's very well said. Sunil, I'm cautious of your time, but do we have time for one more question?
Let's make that last one, please.
Done. So we'll do the last question. This is from KK Sharma. It's an interesting question. He says, among strategy, tactical approach, and operability, which one or how do you blend the three? And what will you recommend should be the blend of the three for achieving your objectives of optionality, resilience, and foresightedness? I think this question will help a lot of people think through their thought process. So it'll be a great question to conclude on this chatting.
So I will repeat what I said. I thought I actually mentioned this, that strategy itself cannot be stratified. It has to be, in today's world, a dynamic strategy, which is backed by operational capabilities which have flexibility built into them, and a feedback loop system that allows us to change as the environment is constantly changing around us. If we want to be successful, if we want to be leaders, let me come to the leaders, because those are the people who truly matter. Everybody else follows. If you want to be leaders, then for us, it is important to figure out a way to be able to move, to have a glide path between these three. And these three have to talk to each other over and over and over again all the time. And that, I believe, is the best strategy that we can create for ourselves to be successful today as also in the future.
Fantastic, fabulous. I think that sums it up very well. Sunil, thank you again very much for your time. I know this is a busy time, and we really appreciate you taking this time out for AIMA and giving us this lecture. Rekha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Munjal. I know you're very pressed for time, so I'll make this very short. I just want to thank you very much for a wonderful session. I'm sure Professor Dhingra would like to say something about it.
Sure.
Oh no, he's already very well expressed a number of the key things, and it reminds me of a number of his comments. Remind me of the popular phrase we use in the United States and in American boardrooms. As you know, ice hockey is a very popular sport in the United States. And there's a favorite quote from one of the players which said, "You skate to where the puck is going," right?
Yeah.
And that really is captures the essence of what Mr. Munjal has been talking about in this dynamic world, where you don't only have to be adaptable, but agile. How quickly you can adapt. Not just adapt in 2 or 3 or 4 years, how you can adapt in real time, and so therefore your agility, and how resilient you are to shocks that come around you. So thank you very much, Mr. Munjal. I thank you, Mr. Kampani and Dr. Sethi and the team at AIMA. Thank you very much for a great session.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal. Thank you,
Good luck.
Vishal. Vishal, this was your first tryst with AIMA online, and you handled it very well. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the delegates. The comments are fantastic, and I'll share them with Mr. Munjal and Vishal.
Yeah, I wish we have so many questions. I just wish we had more time, but I know Mr. Munjal's schedule is quite.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Professor
Bye-bye.
Dingli.
Thank you, Mr.
Bye-bye.
Dingla. Thank you.
Thank you.